says, this is more important than ever. And we do this through the work of the Nobel Peace Prize laureates, whose courage and commitment light the way forward. And one such inspiration is Masako Wada and Nihon Hidankyo. And Masako-san, you are with us here today. She was just a baby when the bomb fell on Nagasaki in 1945. Today, she is the Assistant Secretary General of Nihon Hidankyo, the Japanese organization of atomic bomb survivors, the Hibakushas, who received the Peace Prize in 2024, in December last year. Masako-san and her fellow Hibakushas have dedicated their lives to share their stories to ensure nuclear weapons are never used again. Their voices have helped build a powerful global taboo. And if they have not lost hope, who are we to? When we asked Nihon Hidankyo in October last year, how could we support their work? They said, we are the only ones who have actually lived through this. But we are old, and soon we will be gone. Help us share our story before it's too late. We took this at heart. At the Nobel Peace Center, we created an exhibition that tells their story through the lens of human suffering. It has reached thousands, here in our museum in Oslo, but also around the world abroad on the Peace Boat. And we've developed education materials, hosted workshops, and aim to reach hundreds of thousands of students globally in the coming months. Today's conference and festival are built around Nihon Hidankyo's message. Our goal is to create a meeting point for civil society, politicians, and peace activists with focus on inspiration, hope, and solutions. And we are so honored to be joined by all of you here and by all the speakers and by several Nobel Peace Prize laureates whose work intersects with the nuclear threat. As Ingrid said, Nargis Mohammadi will be with us live from Iran. Center for Civil Liberties are here with Sasha Romanchova, laureate from 2022. And she will speak about the nuclear threat in Ukraine. And of course, Daniel Högsta is here to talk about the global picture. I look forward to hearing their and all the other speakers' perspectives and suggestions. And before I end, I just want to thank our partners, Hydro Reitan, the Norwegian Minister of Foreign Affairs, the City of Oslo, Bergesen Foundation, Outrider Foundation, Lex International, and Scandinavia, Japan, Sasakawa Foundation for making this conference and festival possible. It has been a truly meaningful year for us at the Nobel Peace Center, beginning on October 11th, when the chair of the Norwegian Nobel Committee announced the Nobel Peace Prize to Nihon Hidankyo. It is now my great honor to welcome him on stage. Please join me in welcoming Jørgen Watne Frydnes and help me give him a warm welcome.
Thank you, Kjersti. Dear friends, it is a true honor to welcome you here to the Nobel Peace Center and to open this important conference on nuclear disarmament. As said, today we mark that it's 80 years since the atomic bombings of Hiroshima. In 3 days, we remember Nagasaki. We pay tribute to all those who were lost, to all the survivors, and to all those who turned pain into hope and memory into a force for peace. These two attacks did not just destroy cities. They changed the course of human history. They forced us to confront with unbearable clarity the scale of devastation that we as human beings are capable of. From the ruins of the atomic bombs rose the voices of the Hibakusha. survivors who, despite physical suffering and painful memories, chose to bear witness and inspire hope. By sharing their stories, they laid the groundwork for what we now call the nuclear taboo, stigmatizing the use of nuclear weapons as morally unacceptable. But we must be honest, the taboo is under threat. We stand now at the edge of a new and unstable nuclear age. Nuclear powers are modernizing their arsenals. New nations are seeking these weapons. Disarmament treaties are collapsing. And in today's conflicts, the threat of nuclear use is returning to the public rhetoric. In the face of this, the task of remembrance becomes not only moral, but urgent. Last year, the Norwegian Nobel Committee awarded the Nobel Peace Prize to Nihon Hidankyo, the Confederation of Atomic Bomb Survivors in Japan. It was a tribute to their tireless efforts to ensure that this promise, this taboo, is remembered, renewed, and passed on. The prize was, however, more than just a recognition. It's also a warning and a call. A warning that the nuclear threat is not behind us. It is ahead of us. And a call to remember what too many seems to have forgotten, what nuclear weapons truly are. Just a few days ago, the Nobel Committee had the honor of visiting Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These are cities that bear witness to the unspeakable. And yet, somehow, they're also cities of life, of resilience, of resistance. We visited the museums and the memorials. We stood in streets where the ground once burned, and in places where silence speaks louder than words. But what I will never forget, are the people we met. Survivors who shared their stories with unwavering dignity. Young students who carry the testimony of earlier generations. Politicians with a purpose and an agenda of disarmament. The moment that moved me the most was when a hibakusha, now in her 80s, looked me in the eyes and said, "I do not talk about this because I want to. I talk about it because we have to." The media and the public attention in Japan was overwhelming, almost unbelievable. Ordinary citizens, activists, academics, politicians, even the imperial family wanted to meet us to discuss nuclear disarmament and share ideas and testimonies. Dozens of journalists covered every meeting, every event. As our ambassador said, I don't think any Norwegian has been this popular in Japan since AHA breakthrough in the 1980s. Well, I laughed, as you, and I was flattered, because who wouldn't be? But he had a point, because what we witnessed was not just hospitality. It was a shared understanding among many that memory matters, that the nuclear taboo cannot survive on treaties and speeches alone. It must be kept alive by people. And that brings me to the heart of today's event, and to one of the most inspiring people I've met on my journey. One of these voices, steady, powerful, unforgettable, belongs to Masako Wada, Assistant Secretary General of Nihon Hidankyo. She's traveled the world with her message. She has spoken with leaders, students, diplomats, and citizens. And wherever she goes, she brings with her the gravity of history and the determination to ensure it is not repeated. It is an honor to welcome her here today, not only as a hibakusha and a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, but as a living symbol of what it means to turn memory into action for peace and nuclear disarmament. Please join me in welcoming Masako Wada.
Thank you. Thank you, Frydnes-san. Thank you very much. So I'm so moved. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to speak as a hibakusha of Nagasaki. I was a 1 year and 10-month-old baby when Nagasaki was devastated by the atomic bomb. My house was located 2.9 kilometers away from the blast center. Thanks to the mountains surrounding the central part of Nagasaki City, I have survived to this day. I was too young to remember that day, but my mother used to tell her story over and over again. On the mountain path, she saw a file of people escaping from fire near the blast center. They looked like a line of ants, but in fact, they were rows of burned and injured, chocolate-colored human beings. Their scantily clad bodies burnt all over, and their hair matted with blood and standing an end like horns. The empty lot next to our house became a cremation ground where dead bodies collected by garbage carts were brought in and incinerated day after day. Everyone soon became numb to the growing number of corpses and even to the stench from burning bodies. What is human dignity? Humans are not created to be treated like this. 80 years have passed since the first use of nuclear weapons by the US. The average age of the hibakusha has reached 86. Every year, about 10,000 hibakusha pass away. Soon there will be no A-bomb survivors. But before that, by the use of the third nuclear weapons, the world may encounter new hibakusha who will experience the same suffering that the hibakusha have gone through. Their pain, suffering are deep and still continue. The death of loved ones, survivors' guilt, the scenes, sounds, and the smell of that time etched in their memory. Diseases of unknown cause, economic difficulty, prejudice, and discrimination. So many dreams given up. All these difficulties forced those who were under the mushroom cloud on that day to die or to live as hibakusha. With the adoption of the Treaty of Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons in 2017, hibakusha were overjoyed and felt that a heavy and rusty gate, which we had been pounding for many years, began to open, and we finally saw a ray of light. However, what we actually found beyond the slightly opened gate was a huge military spending and new weapons that are being developed every day. What has the world done in the 55 years since the NPT entered into force? Non-nuclear weapons states and Hibakusha were frustrated by the nuclear weapons state neglects of their obligation to implement the NPT. The nuclear-armed states and their allies should recognize the fact that due to their insincerity and arrogance, the entire human race is on the brink of nuclear war. In today's unstable world, the risk of nuclear weapons use is the highest since the end of the Cold War. In Nihon Hidankyo's founding statement, Message to the World of 1956, we declared our pledge to save humanity from the crisis through the lessons learned from our experiences, while at the same time saving ourselves. Nuclear weapons are inhuman weapons that bring indiscriminate and widespread damage to the victims from the blast, heat rays, and radiation, and from after effects that last for many years. Hibakusha know more than anyone else that if nuclear weapons are used for the third time, there will no longer be anyone left alive to happily observe the effect and the consequences. Nihon Hidankyo was awarded the 2024 Nobel Prize. The committee evaluated the work for each Hibakusha who, by sharing experience and witness accounts, conveyed to people the inhuman consequences of nuclear weapons. Chairman Frydnes spoke in his speech. They bridge the gap between those who were there and we other untouched by violence of the past. They are living reminders of what is at stake. I believe the Nobel Committee decided to award the prize to Nihon Hidankyo, recognizing that the existence of Hibakusha and their words, not nuclear weapons, have been deterrent to nuclear war. I am happy that the term of Nihon Hidankyo has become known in Japan and abroad. Receiving the award was not our goal, but it has provided a new boost for our mission. The Hibakusha are the ones who know the humanitarian consequences of the use of nuclear weapons. We will continue to convey that reality. Please listen to us please empathize with us. Find out what you can do and take action together with us. Nuclear weapons cannot coexist with human beings. Nuclear weapons were made by humans and used by humans. So it is also up to the humans to abolish them by our wisdom, public conscience, and responsibility. No more hibakusha and no more war. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Masako Wada. Thank you for sharing your story and for urging us all to act. Have you noticed that we have a tree on stage? This tree is a hibaku-yumoku, the Japanese word for a tree that survived the atomic bomb. Seeds from the trees that managed to survive have been harvested and planted and spread as symbols of peace to other countries and cities, among them to the Botanical Garden here in Oslo. And they have been very kind to lend us this tree. So I was applauding Masako Wada so much that I lost all my papers. So I just have to find the right page here. We are transferring now to our session 1, the nuclear threat anno 2025. Can we avoid a new nuclear arms race? Since the Nobel Peace Prize to Nihon Hidankyo was awarded in October last year, the nuclear threat seems to have been only growing and is now looming larger than at any time since the Cold War. The conflict between the two nuclear powers, India and Pakistan, that escalated in May, the war between Israel and Iran in June, and the ongoing conflicts in Ukraine and the Middle East, combined with a more polarized rhetoric from many world leaders, all of that reminds us that the world is at a dangerous place. Is it still possible to avoid a nuclear arms race, a new nuclear arms race? Is it still possible to talk about nuclear disarmament, or even to discuss the prohibition of nuclear weapons? We will try to answer these questions in the next hour or so. To help us draw a picture of the nuclear threat today, we will hear from 3 Nobel Peace Prize laureates, each of them with very different perspectives. Narges Mohammadi, who received the prize in 2023 for her fight for women's rights, will join us from Iran. Sasha Romantsova will talk from the Ukraine perspective. But first, let's hear from ICAN. They were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017 for their work with the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons that was adopted the same year. I want you all to welcome their Deputy Director, Daniel Høgstad.
Thank you very much, Ingvild, and thank you very much to the Nobel Peace Center for hosting us and marking this extremely important anniversary at such a crucial time. And I do want to pay special tribute to Masako Wada, Wada-san. Thank you for your inspirational advocacy and your courage and your leadership. Thank you. Dear friends and colleagues, can we avoid a new nuclear arms race? Unfortunately, the evidence strongly suggests that we are already in a new nuclear arms race. In 2024, nuclear armed states spent $100 billion on their nuclear arsenals, an 11% increase from the previous year, representing $190,151 every single minute. Over the past 5 years, global spending on nuclear weapons has increased by 47%. The cycles of escalations and provocations are becoming frighteningly frequent. We've been witnessing one such cycle in the last few days between Russia and the United States, which apparently started with an insult or some high-level online trolling and resulted in nuclear submarines being deployed. The risk is that we become numb to these kinds of things, that this becomes the new normal, which distracts from the urgency and which obscures the only truth that matters when it comes to nuclear weapons, the truth that Nihon Hidankyo and Hibakusha have dedicated their lives to sharing. What happens when nuclear weapons are used? What do they do to people? What do they mean for our shared humanity? So was this new nuclear arms race inevitable? Whether it be because of Russia's aggression and invasion of Ukraine and their numerous reckless threats to use nuclear weapons in the context of that war, or dramatic political shifts, or an arms industry, an increasingly emboldened arms industry that made $42.5 billion from nuclear weapons contracts signed in 2024 alone, or a combination of all those factors. No, it was not inevitable. There have been opportunities to pursue a different path. There have been choices made. Every government has a role to play, and all must be held to account. What are their records when it comes to nuclear weapons? Did they denounce and reject any threat to use nuclear weapons, no matter who made it? How have they contributed to the stigmatization of nuclear weapons and the nuclear taboo? Did they condemn all incitements to proliferation? Most importantly, did they seize the opportunity to change course by supporting the historic ban on nuclear weapons? Did they show leadership and resolve to do so, even when there was pressure from peers or from nuclear armed states? Or did they shrink away from that challenge? Did they do nothing? Did they make excuses, saying that conditions are not conducive for nuclear disarmament, or that military alliance obligations do not allow it, or that Russian aggression means that nothing is possible? Did they change policies and actually embrace a role for nuclear weapons in their national security in their last few years? Some governments, and many of them are here in Europe, are actively encouraging or abetting nuclear escalation and proliferation. We are now witnessing plans for a new nuclear umbrella in Europe and calls for more deployments across Europe, throwing existing legal obligations to the wind. And in spite of the inconvenient fact that the nuclear weapons in Europe are most likely intended to be used in Europe. Who benefits from the normalization of nuclear weapons? The worst actors, Russia. Responding to threats with threats, creating and expanding roles for nuclear weapons only reinforces the notion that nuclear weapons are a legitimate tool of statecraft. This plays into Putin's hands, and it can only lead to further escalation and to catastrophe. The pernicious myth of nuclear deterrence is at the heart of all of this. Nuclear deterrence is an unrealistic and dangerous propaganda masquerading as realism and pragmatism. It is an unprovable theory based on naive assumptions about human behavior, for which escalation is a key feature, not a bug. But there is an off-ramp to the nuclear arms race. It starts with dismantling the myth of nuclear deterrence and rejecting any role for nuclear weapons, and it is rooted in multilateralism and diplomacy. That is what the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons is all about. This is where real leadership is being shown. The treaty has come a long way in a short time since it entered into force in 2021. It will soon achieve the official support from more than half of the world's governments. The TPNW was inspired by the message of the Hibakusha, and unlike nuclear deterrence, it is rooted in science, in the evidence of the humanitarian consequences of nuclear weapons. It is right there for any government to choose to join the right side of history. It might not be easy politically always, but it is as simple as that. Honoring the Hibakusha does not mean simply paying lip service to their suffering, like so many leaders have been content to do. It means actually hearing their message, which is very clear. Recognize the unacceptable humanitarian harm nuclear weapons cause, reject nuclear deterrence, join the TPNW, and eliminate nuclear weapons. We owe the Hibakusha a debt of gratitude, yes, but much more than that, we owe them action. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Daniel Høgstad, and thank you, Arken, for the work you are doing. And now we're going to Iran, where Nobel Peace Prize laureate Narges Mohammadi has been incarcerated for her activism for years, but is now able to join us live. I just want to prepare you that Narges will be speaking in Farsi, so you can prepare to put your headphones on. It will be her brother, Hamid Reza Mohammadi, who will translate her speech for you. Narges, are you with us? So I don't think I can see Narges, but I can still not hear her. There she is. Hello, Narges. So good to see you. How are you?
Hello. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'm doing well. I'm speaking to you from Tehran, from Iran. So I truly appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for taking the risk to talk to us today. You have been under constant threat from the regime, and you've received physical threats warning you to remain silent, especially since the recent attacks from Israel on Iran. But we are so happy that you are not silent and that you want to speak to us today. We are looking forward to hearing your remarks. Narges Mohammadi, the floor is yours.
I warmly welcome all distinguished participants and honored to be part of this important conference. I extend my heartfelt congratulations to the newest Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Nihon Hidankyo. May their powerful efforts grow stronger and inspire even greater impact in the years to come. The presence of Nihon Hidankyo and myself as present Nobel Peace Prize laureates at this conference is in itself a response to one of the most urgent questions of our time. Why does the world still need nuclear disarmament? Nihon Hidankyo has long stood for a world free of nuclear weapons, a commitment born from the catastrophic use of nuclear force against the people of Japan exactly 8 years ago in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I speak to you from Iran, a country whose people have borne the heavy consequences of the ruling regime policies, including its nuclear program. These policies pursued without the consent or participation of the Iranian people have led to poverty, hardship, sanctions, international isolations, environmental devastation, and constant shadow of war. While Iran is rich in not only oil and gas, but also two vast and inexhaustible sources of clean energy, sun and wind, today we face widespread shortages of electricity and water across the country. The entire country is paralyzed for hours or even days without power or water, yet the regime processes 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium that it now feels compelled to hide. I must state here that in the case of Iran's nuclear policy, the claim of its being peaceful is mere political rhetoric. We know well that the core issue has always been about power and competition. This truth is evident both in international negotiations and among the public. Esteemed guests, we are here to address a vital issue, one that concerns the fate of humanity and our shared home, planet Earth. In a world where authoritarian governments pursue nuclear weapons to ensure their survival and where invasions of one country by another are becoming normal, And as international institutions like the United Nations steadily lose their influence, the temptation for countries to pursue nuclear arms grows stronger. The movement for nuclear disarmament has regressed in the face of the renewed ambition and drive for nations competing for nuclear superiority. The discourse of peace and global peace movements have been weakened, and what we often see in global media is a normalization of war and genocide. In such conditions, some believe that the level of conflict and tension has risen so sharply that perhaps even today it is already too late to prevent a nuclear arms race in the Middle East. Esteemed participants, institutions like the International Atomic Energy Agency and Western governments can contain the unpredictable and foreseeable consequences of nuclear tensions if they act without double standards. But to truly solve this crisis, we need a global consensus and will to address the roots of these tensions and work to reduce them. Does increasing global inequality, along with the regression and weakening of democracy, correlate with rising nuclear competition? Do the world's environmental crises have a relationship with escalating nuclear rivalry? I won't elaborate further. I only wish to point out that to resolve the nuclear crisis, we need consensus-building forces within international institutions and among global and regional powers, so that instead of focusing only on the nuclear capabilities of various countries, we examine the causes of heightened regional and global tensions. Honorable attendees, when it comes to Iran, I can say with certainty that the Iranian people do not see their security, dignity, or power as dependent on the regime's nuclear capability. If they are given the opportunity to truly participate in determining their own destiny, they will choose democracy, freedom, equality, human rights, development, prosperity, constructive international relations, and cooperation with all the nations of the world. In recent years, you have witnessed the glorious woman, life, freedom movement in Iran. The people of Iran are fighting for their right to self-determination, while the Islamic Republic regime responds to their rightful demands with executions, killings, imprisonment, torture, and threats. These days, people inside Iran are raising their voices in protests. In response to the regime's slogan, "Nuclear energy is our absolute right," they say, bread, water, electricity, job, education, freedom, peace, life, and human dignity are our absolute rights. The transition from a religious authoritarian system to democracy and achieving freedom and equality through the guarantee of human rights, the empowerment of the people and civil society, and the reliance on the agency of the people themselves is the fundamental solution to Iran's current crisis, including nuclear crisis. I will continue to struggle alongside the Iranian people for a democratic, peaceful transition to an end to the religious tyranny regime. We are calling for a free and transparent referendum under the supervision of the United Nations and international bodies to allow the Iranian people to reclaim their national sovereignty. In this endeavor, we seek the support of all advocates of freedom, peace, and democracy across the globe. Let us hope that with the efforts of peace advocates, freedom, and democracy seekers, we will one day witness a world free of war, tyranny, and atomic threat. Thank you very much.
Merci, Nargis Mohammadi. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you could feel the warmth of the audience here in Oslo. Stay safe, and we hope to welcome you in person in Oslo sometime. Thank you for joining us today. From Iran to Ukraine, a country more and more marked by war, 3.5 years after the full-scale Russian invasion, where the Nobel Peace Prize awarded organization Center for Civil Liberties are working tirelessly to document war crimes and prepare the country for a time after war. Please welcome the Executive Director of Center for Civil Liberties, Sasha Romantsova.
Hello, I'm really happy to be here with you, speak about a little bit unpredictable topic for our organization, because when you documented war crime at the territory which concrete now have a war conflict, you figure out that not only traditional aggression can be scared, but we and our partners have such unique investigation, which call Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant under occupation. That's exactly first time in the history of armed conflict. Nuclear power plant and function at the territory of active war zone. So I will try to use these nice things. I don't know how it's called. So what exactly we need to remember when we speak about modern nuclear power threats. So it's, first of all, ensure it's shelling and militarization of such object. It's a huge industrial object which was built during the Soviet Union time with technology which maybe previous speaker can be more detail specific explain. But the problem of this thing that it's unstable. So if you shell it, it will be really bad consequences after this. I'm just remind you that at the territory of Ukraine, we have one nuclear catastrophe, it's Chernobyl. And when Chernobyl was destroyed, that not Soviet or Russian authorities exactly speak about that. Radiation was detected at the Sweden nuclear power station. So when we speak about militarization and shelling of such object, we speak about our common safety. Second one, and it's torture of personnel. That's a huge object with exactly 11,000 employees working there. It's specific employees. More than 10,000 of them, it's people with a special licensee to work there. And they're under the torture, and I will speak about how we figure out that. Replacement of personnel, when these really knowledgeable, really educated people work at not exactly that place, which in system they need to be and belong. And last one, plan to restart the plant. What that means, at the beginning, I want to just show the examples what is big of this nuclear power station. So we speak about 5,700 megawatt, 11,000 employees. Operation is half of nuclear electricity, all the electricity, supplying all the electricity for population of Ukraine. It's 42 million, so quite big. And we in the European system electricity supply, and that means that people at Hungary, Poland, Moldova, Romania, Slovakia, and Belarus exactly take the electricity from there. For your comparing, you need to maybe know exactly Fukushima nuclear power plant, that was 5,300 megawatts, and that was near the 5,000 employers. And when we speak about Chernobyl, sorry, I need to mention it because it's our history. And that was just near half of this poverty and near the half of this operation people who live there. Like Soviet heritage, we have this construction like that. So you have a big industrial object, like nuclear power plant. You always have a Sputnik city. So it's a city where the families of employees living there. Why it's so important? Because that's what you see now, militarization. It's inside the nuclear power station building. So it's mean that even something like non-accurate put the button, it will be exploited. But that's happened with whole the city around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which exactly called Energodar. Okay, it's like complicated to translate, but these people who work at the power plant, it's 11,000 people with unique skills and unique knowledges, have a family. This family lives near the nuclear power plants. And one of the form of torture, except to beating them, using electricity, to different kind of really unpleasant procedure, that exactly scaring by FSB that their family will be attacked. And what we have as the result, most of these people trying to escape from this city. Most of these people left their job, which they feel really deeply not only afraid, but like responsibility, because again, you need to be there to be part of security. And these people exactly bring us of the understanding that torturing, FSB pressure, scaring, bring them at the situation when they can be normal security stuff, and they not bring us at the situation when they make a right decision about function of this power plant. Except that they replace them in the system which they can have a right decision. And we have a few big investigation about this, which you can find here. But next, really important things that June of 2023, Kakhovka Dam, maybe you heard about this name. That's a big, big reservoir of water which bring the security water for power plant. So that means that when Russia destroyed this dam, they take out all the water which we need for security of power plant, and then brings us in the situation when power plant in one moment can be exactly non-clear or kind of bomb defector. We speak about nuclear weapon which have an aim to destroy something. Nuclear power plants have an aim just to supply the electricity, but it can happen that this start to be a bomb. That's why we support a lot of different initiatives which trying to speak by common people voice, and how exactly our Nobel laureates remind us that's opportunity to stop this movement to secure such power plant. It's not even at the politician level. It's a politician, absolutely common people. And one of them, a journalist from Japan named Daisaki Yoshimura. He is create the Kamishiba paper theater, traditional paper theater, which give the story about girl. The clouds, they won't disappear by Kia, that's name of this theater. He just speak with the people, with foreigners who come to the world exhibition in Japan. He come appeal to us, and exactly about more than 111 different countries, just spread this understanding. Nuclear security, it's not a question of politician. It's a question of common people who can create absolutely unique and sometimes use the art to explain that we surely don't want to be in any world when nuclear power plant or exactly bomb explode and destroy our society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sasha Romantsova. With the messages from Nihon Hidankyo, Ikan, Nargis Mohammadi, and Sasha as a backdrop, we will now enter into a conversation about political leadership and today's international climate. What do the people in power have the power to do? What choices are Europe and the Nordics facing in today's situation? To reflect on these questions, we have invited Stefan Löfven, the former Prime Minister of Sweden and Chair of the Board of SIPRI, the Stockholm Peace Research Institute, and Eivind Vad Petersson, State Secretary for Minister of Foreign Affairs, Norway. To lead the conversation, we have Arnaud Siad. He is the host and producer of Prio's Peace in a Pod. Give them all a warm welcome.
Thank you, Ingvild, and to the distinguished Nobel Peace Laureates and to our audience here and online. So before we begin, I've been told by my partner that I have a terrible pronunciation of Nordic names. So former Prime Minister Stefan Löfven.
Very good.
State Secretary Eivind Vad Petersson. Thank you for not only just being with us today, but also for giving me for my pronunciation. Before we dive in, I just want to take a moment to talk about the context we find ourselves in. I'm not being hyperbolic when I say that we are the critical juncture in global affairs, and I know these type of terms get thrown around a lot, unprecedented, unlike any other time before. But the fact is, the system of global norms and institutions built after the Second World War seems to be crumbling before our very eyes, with a series of crises happening at the same time. Think of the UN Charter, particularly its protection of state sovereignty being torn apart by Russia invading Ukraine. We have the UN Security Council being completely paralyzed. We have international humanitarian law being trampled on a daily basis. Everyone looking at Gaza can attest to that. And many of the very tools designed to uphold international law are also under attack. Think of the fact that sitting judges of the International Criminal Court are under US sanctions, and founding members of the courts, such as my country, France, say that they won't enforce warrants against the Israeli government. So all the while, we have the US pulling the rug under the feet of Europeans, saying, we don't know if Article 5 of the NATO alliance can be enforced, which prompts a flurry of European declarations about ramping up defense. It's a lot, and people are afraid. According to a survey released by the Peace Research Institute Oslo yesterday, 59% of Norwegians believe a new armed conflict is possible or likely in Europe within the next 10 years. And in the midst of all this crisis, we have, of course, Nihon Hidankyo, the winners of the Nobel Peace Prize last year, who are not just telling us that nuclear weapons shouldn't exist anymore, but they're also telling us that the international system of legal, norms and mutual obligations, they matter as well. So as we begin, I'd like to keep in mind this sort of systemic crisis we find ourselves in, and ask you to start something about the title of the conference today. Can we avoid a nuclear arms race? So to you, Mr. Löfven, first, aren't we already in one? And what's your assessment of the moment we're in?
Well, it's obvious also by your own description that the world is in a very bad place right now. So we have to be honest and admit that, because that's the only way for us to get out of it. We need to change direction and be honest first. We've had during a few decades now a globalization with changed technology, big companies being able to produce all over the world, the flow of capital grown. That has increased inequality in the world. And over years now, the discontent from people of this is emerging and growing. That led to also, one of the things it led to was a growing nationalism. Mm-hmm. So that is what we see today. It's a make America great again. It's our country are the best, is the best, and our country, our region. And it doesn't work in a world where we have so many challenges, as you described, that need global cooperation. So that is the bad side. But we have to start looking at the more bright side. It is a fact that last September, the General Assembly, UN General Assembly, decided on a pact for the future, because the countries, the member states of the United Nations understand that we have to change direction, we have to do something. So there is an awareness, anyhow. It's a long way to go, but things are happening, and I think for us now, it's important to support that process in any way we can, as NGOs, as politicians, as trade union leaders, as whatever, to support that and keep the pressure on political leaders so that we can see the can be changes. The conference in Seville now in beginning of July on the financing for development was a very, very important step forward, because we need to make sure that we have the finances that are required to do what we want to do. So things are starting to happen. I would love to concentrate even more on the possibilities, because we cannot let this be a normal situation that we're in today. We cannot stand there. We have to say, this is not good, we have to change, we can do it.
State Secretary, same question to you. From your vantage point in the Norwegian government, how do you view the current international moment we're in?
Well, for sure, the list of problems and challenges is indeed long. Let me, though, on behalf of the host government, so to speak, just acknowledge as well our hosts, but also the solemn occasion as we meet them in on the exactly to the day on the 80th anniversary of the Hiroshima bombing. The list of problems and challenges is long. I'm part of the government. A couple of months ago, we drafted and published Norway's first ever national security strategy. And the starting point of that national security strategy is the simple observation that Norway, our country, now finds ourselves in the most serious security environment since the end of the Second World War. There are several trends pointing in the wrong direction behind that overall observation. One of them is, of course, the increased threat of nuclear proliferation and the weakening of what has been referred to already today as the nuclear taboo. Still, while the list of problems is long, we must not lose hope. There's still possible to change the trend we're on, and without being over-optimistic, there are some promising signs among what is admittedly overall a dark picture. While the whole architecture, the web of agreements, conventions that we have built to sort of cement this nuclear taboo, that is indeed now under serious threat. Countries are undermining, they are withdrawing these agreements. But there are just one small possible positive example. What has happened now from the declared nuclear weapon states when it comes to the use of artificial intelligence and nuclear weapons. Everyone can then foresee this. It's rather dark science fiction when you take artificial intelligence and mix it with nuclear weapons. There's now a clear commitment from all the declared nuclear weapon states that artificial intelligence should be kept away from the nuclear arsenals. That's a step in the right direction. And the clock is now also ticking on the New START agreement. And luckily, we've seen some promising signs lately coming from President Trump that the US is open to talks with Russia and with China in terms of settling on a new arms control agreement. We have to work and support those possible trends, while, again, admittedly, the list of problems and challenges is long.
Okay, I hear hints of optimism in both of your answers. The reality, of course, is that in March, European leaders agreed to a massive increase to defense spending, a 800 billion euros plan. And at the end of June, at The Hague, NATO allies agreed to increase their defense spending to 5% of GDP. So put simply, we are really witnessing a massive increase, not just in defense talk, but action here in Europe. So, Mr. Levin, do you believe this will significantly alter the defense landscape here at home? Is it a game changer?
Depending on if we are able to look at things in different time zones, time frames, the defense of Ukraine is crucial to Europe. And the saying that peace is not only the absence of war, peace is more. So we cannot let Russia win this war. Therefore, right here and now, we need to do what we do to make sure that we can defend Ukraine and also ourselves. But in the longer run, we have to understand that a constant increase of military capacity is not the sustainable solution if you want peace. It is not. So right now, while we have this with Russia, we also have to start thinking, okay, what's next? When this war is over, how will the new world order look like? What is it? Do we need a new Helsinki conference? What is it we have to do? Because we have to find a way to solve things together. We have to find a way to go towards a common security. This nuclear threat, this mutually assured destruction, MAD, mad. This is mad. To believe that you are secure just because I can destroy you and you can destroy me and we can destroy you, and we call that security. Crazy. You know, madam. Let's change that to mutually assured survival. So if we can start a dialogue between countries, between regions, that the best long-term sustainable security we can provide for people is when we are in dialogue and cooperation with other countries. Because when my neighbor feels safer, I am safer. If my neighbor feels unsafe, I am unsafe. So that is, so here and now we need to make sure Russia doesn't win the war, but we have to start discussing, planning for what comes after a new world order. Stabilize United Nations, make it function better, but yeah.
Well, it seems that the new world order, at least seen from Europe's vantage point, is a consecration a little bit of what French President Emmanuel Macron has been advocating for many years, which is the concept of strategic autonomy. And he's been championing this even before he famously called NATO brain dead in 2019. And there's been even talks in recent months of potentially looking at a French nuclear umbrella in Europe among some circles. So, State Secretary, to you, is there consensus in Europe today around this concept of strategic autonomy? In other words, can Europe do without its US ally?
I would say there's certainly no consensus on the precise definition of what strategic autonomy should be. Thereby, it's troubling to also say that there's a necessary consensus on this concept. However, there's a clear acknowledgement across European capitals and governments that Europe needs to step up and take more responsibility for our own security. That was made evident, of course, with the NATO summit earlier this summer. My government, Norway, we pose no threat to anyone. NATO does not pose any threat to anyone, but we will defend ourselves. NATO is a defensive alliance. And it's the clear realization that Europe needs to do more. This has less to do with the current US president than many think. This has been the message on repeat coming from across the Atlantic now for decades. it's a realization of the times we find ourselves in. Russia is our neighbor too, and it's still conducting a brutal war of aggression against another neighboring country that has consequences for our own security, and we need to step up and do more. Still, I think I would take issue somewhat with part of your introduction when it comes to the status of Article 5. Yes, there's been a turbulent few months with the new US administration, but I remain confident in the US's commitment to Article 5. Many things have happened, but there's actually no reason in their actual statements, neither in their actions, even more important, to draw that conclusion. NATO remains a strong alliance. Also now, this, we believe, is a very positive thing for Norwegian security, is that our Swedish neighbors and friends are now also allies together with Finland. That increases stability in our part of the world, and it's a good thing for NATO as well.
Right. And okay, this is for the sort of military landscape in Europe at the moment. But to the initial question of how do we get to that point where we sort of disarm, I think actions matter. And if you look at what's going on around the world, especially in the last few months, with some sort of pretty unsettling nuclear chest puffing left and right, I think the question becomes, how do we make that happen in practice? I mean, think of Iran, and I'm so glad we had Narges Mohammadi with us today. We've had Iran enriching uranium, saying, it's for peaceful purposes. As Narges said, it's of course about power and competition. And we saw Israel launching an attack on Iran last June, which led to 12 days of war and the US bombing 3 nuclear sites. So, Mr. Löfven, to you first. The US and Israeli strikes may have set back, Iran's nuclear program to some degree. We don't know by how much. Do you think this type of action may simply just provoke countries like Iran to just dash for the bomb?
Could. I mean, again, here we see we have the capacity to solve this very complex situation. We did that with the JCPOA. So there was an agreement in place, but unfortunately, the U.S. withdrew, and Trump, of course, withdrew. So we see that there is a possibility, and I do hope now that the contacts between Germany, France, and others with Iran can lead to a similar process, so that they, according to NPT, that they can have a peaceful nuclear energy, but not for weapons. So we can do it. I just forgot to say something when I said that we need to do what we do now to resist Russia. That does not include increase of nuclear weapons. It does not. We have to find a way to decrease number and get rid of them eventually. So although we are increasing our military capacity, I don't want to see an increase of nuclear weapons. On the contrary.
How do we get to a consensus around that issue? I mean, Narges Mohammadi was mentioning the double standards sometimes, especially in the West, on these issues. For example, if we think, obviously the prospect of a nuclear-armed Iran is frightening enough, but a lot of countries in the global South are pointing out to the fact that while Iran will be subjected to a series of, checks by the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, countries like Israel, who are widely believed to have a nuclear bomb, are, as far as I'm aware, not publicly really told to, roll it back. And to note, Israel is not a party to the Non-Proliferation Treaty alongside India, Pakistan, and North Korea. So perhaps to you, State Secretary, some critics in the global South are pointing out to the double standard. Do you agree with that sentiment? And is this something that damages the West's standards on this issue?
Well, for sure, I acknowledge that sentiment, and to a certain extent, it's also understandable. The Norwegian position, we try to be consistent on these issues and say that every single country on the planet would benefit from everyone else also being a part of the NPT. The Non-Proliferation Treaty It has its challenges, but broadly speaking, it has actually been fairly successful over the past half-century, bearing in mind that there have been scenarios of nuclear-armed countries being a much larger group than what we do in fact have. Yes, it's maybe over-optimistic again to say that it could have been even worse, but nonetheless, it has been fairly successful in actually keeping things fairly stable. History does not repeat itself, but it rhymes sometimes. We have to keep in mind as well that the number of nuclear warheads on this planet were much, much larger back in the 1970s. That was during the Cold War. Still, and there was most certainly an arms race going on, a nuclear arms race even, still the Soviet Union and the United States back then found a way to enter on a path of diplomacy, of negotiations, a series of agreements that managed to reduce the nuclear stockpiles. It has happened before, it can happen again. There are some promising signs now with the New START, but I acknowledge again that part of the picture now is that then we had two major superpowers. Now China is, of course, on the stage as well, massively increasing their nuclear stockpiles, and having possible negotiations among three parties is tremendously more complicated than just with two. Nonetheless, apparently the political will is there, and that would be the benefit for everyone if we're made to make progress in that regard.
I believe we are running out of time. We had a shorter session.
Yeah.
Prime Minister Löfven, former Prime Minister Mr. Löfven, and State Secretary, thank you both. I'd like to invite now Sri Srinivasan, who will be handling questions from the audience here and online. Sri, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Wonderful session. Please give them a hand. We have thousands of people watching from around the world, including in Iran and other places, and we have many questions coming in, so just one question to each of our speakers. Mr. Former Prime Minister, we have multiple questions about the United Nations from Richard Jordan, from Aminu Razak, asking what is the role for the United Nations? If you can give us some concrete ideas that we can use to look forward.
I think it basically is the same as when it was founded, but it can't work the way it did when it was founded. But to keep the dialogue between nations, to make sure that we have a forum where we can meet and discuss and find solutions and avoid wars, of course, that is the basic. But the United Nations need to, and that's the member states' responsibility. We have to acknowledge and remind ourselves, it's not UN, the scrape in New York, it's the member states who decides if this organization will work well or not. But I'm convinced that we need United Nations, and as I said, with the review and the Pact for the Future, we have a chance for a new start. But we have to be there as the people, to be there and support that and put the pressure on leaders, say, hey, what are you delivering? We took a decision in the General Assembly, what are you delivering?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you?
7.
That's pretty good, right? 7, I think we'll take that. Mr. Peterson, a question for you. Do you believe nuclear weapons create more security or more threats? And what do you think about the message from the survivors talking about the effects of the nuclear weapons?
A nuclear war can never be won and must therefore never be fought. I mean, it's luckily a statement that also all the permanent 5 members of the UN Security Council have subscribed to. It's true, and it's an important fact. It's also an unfortunate reality that nuclear weapons technology, they exist in the world and it cannot be de-invented, but there's still very many things we can do in terms of reducing the stockpiles, rebuilding and further expanding the taboo, and that we must continue to do that because, I mean, it's an interesting coincidence that the acronym MAD also has a certain political meaning as well.
Yes, and we were saying we don't want destruction, we want survival, right? As a thing. Mr. Peterson, how did you react to the news about the United States saying they're going to have a nuclear reactor on the moon?
I had to double check. I think all countries as well have agreed that when it comes to space, we should restrict ourselves. I saw the news. I think there's a bit more details to be to be discovered, and I think we have back in this country. Nuclear power has gone from being a bit of a national taboo to now being very much part of the political debate. But there's quite a distance from that discussion to having something on the moon, I think, as well.
Okay. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you?
7.
7. All right. I think that's what we'll do. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Moderator.
Thank you so much to Stefan Löfven, Erling Wad Pedersen, and Arnaud Siad. So we're now heading for the break. We'll have a 30 minutes break.
So that's for the people here in Oslo. Everyone else who's watching online, please stay tuned. We're going to go outside into the festival, and you're going to meet some of the folks who are putting together a fabulous program there. And in addition to that, we'll have some films from Japan. And we're going to start by showing you a film from the Peace Boat, which is traveling around the world with a message of peace that we all need to hear. Thank you.
And here from the main stage, we will be back at 3 o'clock. See you then.